Dark Souls 2 is good. Sort of. Dark Souls 2 gets bullied something fierce. When it first came out, it was exciting and new. It was magical, and even I made the mistake of buying it twice. Once for the PS3 because I was an impatient child, and again for the PC because younger me thought I was made of money. But let's not dwell on the past right now. But ultimately, it had impossibly massive shoes to fill. Dark Souls 2 could not, would not, ever be able to live up to the hype that the first game had created. Dark Souls had released on the PC in its definitive Prepare to Die edition about 2 years prior, and we're still being plagued by the cult of personality and the hard as Souls memery the game has cursed our society with. It also didn't help either that Dark Souls 2 is kind of, strictly speaking, mechanically very clunky. Poor level design, soul memory, those nutty hitboxes, you move like you've just taken a big poop in your pants, so with how stiff it is, it may as well have been a turn-based RPG. Hollowing, let's talk about hollowing. Hollowing actively punishes you for making mistakes more than it's ever before because it progressively lowers your health instead of cutting off a little fat from the top. Now, why do enemies stop respawning? Never mind all of that, because right now we're going to talk about what Dark Souls 2 actually did well. We're gonna have to dig deep here, I know. But there is at least one thing good about this game. Just trust me on this. Dark Souls 2 was weird. Dark Souls dared to be creative. And that's pretty much going to be my main talking point. If you don't think that's enough, I understand. Get out now, this soul memory. Dark Souls 2's biggest strength was the charm it had from just how different it was from the first Souls game, and how it continues to be so completely different from the third one we ultimately got. The more the game struck out on its own, with its own aesthetic, identity, story, and characters, the better it got, and the more iconic it became. The weirder Dark Souls 2 was, the better it got. Is Dark Souls 2 the Super Mario Land of the Souls series? No, of course it isn't. Stop that. Don't do that. How dare you compare the aloof and improvised feeling of early Game Boy games to Dark Souls 2? Get out of here! Myth and obscurity. These are the themes that have completely integrated themselves into every Souls and Souls-like game, and Dark Souls 2 especially wears these aspects of the series on its sleeves. In Dark Souls 1, you are, as a matter-of-factly, stated the origin myth in the opening credits. The first flame has gone out, everybody is going hollow, and the Age of Fire will end if it isn't rekindled by a chosen undead. This is the setting's creation myth. And what a great myth it is. But it isn't really a myth, is it? We all know this actually happened. A myth can't persist if it can be proven. It stops being a myth at that point. And the game tells us this through no uncertain terms, via the world and the people the game consistently exposes us to. In retrospect, Dark Souls 1 isn't as obscured or as foreign as everyone in their precious lore videos have led you to believe. But all of that changes in Dark Souls 2. You're not the chosen undead, nobody really knows what the heck is going on, there are no convenient answers, only vague rumors, and the only lead you have is the desperate hope that this mythical land of Drangleic will have the answers you seek. From start to finish, the game tries desperately to whelm you with this sense of uncertainty, as you suffer the lot of the foreigner who's been afflicted by a mysterious curse. Only when it manages to maintain this obscurity does the game's story and atmosphere truly excel. There's a certain oblivious agnosticism about Dark Souls 2 that carries over into every level and area where the humans, not the gods, of this world have just plunged themselves into ruin through their own ignorant actions concerning the world's myths. The Huntsman's Copse is a forest used as a hunting ground for the Iron King, where he would release captured undead so he could hunt them down for cruel sport, until the game wardens themselves turned hollow. Likewise, even the Iron King's own castle is a testament to his bored, demented, extravagant sin. A literal Iron Kingdom in the sky, guarded by a court of weeaboo knights, who continue to guard the castle even as it sinks into the sky lava, you know. Sky lava from Yoshi's Island. What? Like Bowser fell in. You know, he was a baby. This isn't even the only kingdom that's been ruined by the amoral sins of humans, as Harvest Valley was once a picturesque breadbasket before their queen used the massive windmills of Earthen Peak to pump and pollute the land with noxious poison in an attempt to make herself more beautiful. King Vendrick is even stated to have been the one personally responsible for the exile and ostracization. He sent the clerics away, and he threw them in the pit with the poopy. I didn't make that up. It's the saint's grave. Into the trash they went. Drangleic is a land that has been ravaged by ignorance. The gods have been abandoned, the land ruled by selfish lords oblivious to the mythical world they inhabit, and even the titular act of rekindling the first flame and its significance has been lost to time. What makes this so weird and therefore so interesting is in the other Souls games, they have an intense respect and admiration for the myth, the linking of the fire, the mythos attached to it, the gods and heroes. They're all venerated and the status of their canonicity is untouched and sacred. There's no room for independence, growth, or to move beyond what's been established in the first game's story because it's so pedestalistian precious. Dark Souls 2 is at its worst when it verges off from this creative direction and swerves madly towards referential material. And it's called the Cathedral of Blue. What exactly is the old Dragon Slayer doing at the Cathedral of Blue? Why is he literally 3 or 4 blocks down from where King Vendrick keeps his dragon riding knights? As a Dragon Slayer, isn't he mandated by the court to not be allowed to live or loiter within 2,000 feet of a dragon zone? Why is Ornstein, out of all the possible characters, the only one to have visibly returned in any way, shape, or form? Somebody Vadi-Vidya me an explanation in the comments below, because it remains a clunky, awkward mystery to me, especially because of how important dragons are to Drangleic. Dragons especially represent a humongous aspect of just how different the world of Dark Souls 2 was compared to the previous game. In Dark Souls 1, dragons were these timeless immortal beings that were once rivals to the gods themselves before drifting off as a mysterious third party, associated with the time of mist and trees before light and dark were even a thing. Either way, the stuff of legends. King Vendrick and his court, though, don't know anything about that. They barely understand the curse that's afflicting them, never mind Dark Souls 1 lore. All they know is that the dragons aren't going hollow. So what do? A group of King Vendrick's knights, who had been breeding and taming the dragons for mounts, start worshipping them, instead, as an ideal physical form to be achieved. Human flesh is weak and will wither under the curse, so forget this nonsense, let's become the eternal dragon master race. King Vendrick's brother, Aldia, good with his hands, was going a similar, if significantly less spiritual route, by cutting dragons open and trying to cobble together what exactly made them immortal, and in doing so created a monstrous menagerie of malformed misfits. The ancient rivals of the gods, an enemy that teased every emotion and ounce of strength from Lord Gwyn and his loyal knights, redefined as animistic idols of pagan worship, or reduced to mere beasts to be picked apart and taken advantage of by the hands of mere mortal men. Then again, these aren't really dragons, are they? They're drakes, undeveloped imitators of the true greatness that is their distant kin, the dragons. The ancient dragon in this game is just a false idol, a prop, an artificial abomination constructed by Aldia. This is all misdirection. There are no real dragons in Drangleic. There are no gods in Drangleic. Drangleic is a land soiled by ignorant heritage, rife with falsified spirituality, deprived of divinity, a delightfully obscure mythos of depravity. This divergence from Dark Souls lore in order to stake out its own independent addition into the canon is what makes Dark Souls 2, at least in some small way, redeemable in my eyes. Dark Souls 1 was a story about preserving or ending the First Flame and the Age of Fire. Dark Souls 3 was a story about the cycle reaching its definitive twilight and coming to an end. Dark Souls 2 wasn't about either of those things. Dark Souls 2 was a foreign, unusual story about humanity's misadventures as they flail in the darkness. Dark Souls 2 isn't good. Dark Souls 2 is not a good game. I am not here to try and convince you it's a good game. I actually played a few hours of the game to try and refresh my memory of what it felt like, and it's just awful. I cannot touch it after how good Dark Souls 3 feels to play. It's seriously like night and day. But if I'm going to at least try to see the silver lining in this mess, it was unique. It dared to be different, it had a story with its own interesting nuances and themes, and I just can't. Why don't the enemies respawn indefinitely? Why isn't there a blue eye orb? Why isn't there a red eye orb? What is soul memory about? Who thought that was a good idea? You get hollowed if you die in an invasion, and then you can't... Can you even invade if you're hollow? I don't even... Wait, it just gives me conniptions just thinking about it.